The United Nations has declared a global climate emergency. Significant climate change is now seen as irreversible, and corporate sustainability is now one of the highest priorities across most businesses. As a result, many companies are now setting net zero targets. Welcome to Talking HR Trends with Natal and Tom. I'm Natal Dank.
And I'm Tom Haag.
And we explore the latest hot topics and business challenges impacting the people side of organizations. Stick around to the end for our practical top tip. And if you find this discussion valuable, please subscribe. So, Tom, what was your key message from this episode?
Let's take two things in mind. Yeah? It's a long-term effort, and we have to start small.
My key message is it's time for HR to be the corporate activist. So, Tom, organizations now need to transform, not just adapt, to respond to the increased complexity and disruption in our marketplace. And this has been a key theme in all our episodes. But interestingly, we haven't talked about one of the biggest challenges facing business, which is climate change. And we've just seen global leaders in Glasgow at the COP26 declare pledges around, going net zero and becoming carbon neutral. And we are seeing companies do this as well, so setting out targets for the next 10 to 20 years. This feels like a big shift in how we do business. It's time to get serious about corporate sustainability. What's your views on this topic, Tom?
First, I hope it is serious, because it's 2021. And, well, it's absolutely not, you could say, the first time it's on the agenda. So let's hope it's taken serious. And I'm still, to be honest, quite skeptical. So that's one. But it's clear it's higher on the agenda. And we have seen, as with other subjects, that now the public and also the employees are more forcing organizations to take it serious. They say, hey, we don't take it any longer. All your talk, you have to do something. And of course, we will help you. And that's where HR should play a role. As we have said earlier, HR cannot say, okay, we are observing it. HR should think about what can we do from our role. And that's probably also why we have kind of been shy to discuss this subject, because it's such a big subject. And we cannot solve it in 10, 15 minutes. But it's super important. It's getting more important, driven by society and the people. And I like that, but let's see what we can do.
I think it's interesting that the driver is coming from, I suppose, the external environment, which is ultimately the customers that are buying the products and services also of our companies, and the talent that we want to attract. So let's have a look at some case studies. So I was really interested in Nestlé's example. So Nestlé have declared that they're going carbon neutral under their brand Nespresso. And they're actually going to aim to do this by next year, 2022. This means they're going to change their whole supply chain. So the supply chain is going to work on renewable energy, and they're looking at their packaging, in particular their famous coffee pods, to be fully recycled. They're also doing big projects in conservation to look at how to create more resilient and sustainable coffee farms. So this is a big kind of commitment by Nestlé to really change how they do their operations. So would Nestlé just do this for humanity, Tom, or is there actually something in it for them? Is there a business benefit for going net zero?
First of all, I think it's very important to look at what companies are promising. And I've learned that when it comes to CO2 emissions, for example, that they are talking about 3 scopes. There's scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 is very narrow. That is around what are we doing in the organization. That's about how much paper do we use and things like that. Relatively simple. Scope 2, it's what you purchase in electricity and things like that. 3 is the interesting scope. That is downstream and upstream. Downstream is all the goods and services and trucks, etc. You need to make your product. Let's say downstream, it is everything you deliver. So the cups of Nestlé are downstream. But many companies, if they promise something, they don't talk about scope 1 or 2 or 3. But sometimes it's just only scope 1. So we'll go to zero emissions, yes, in scope 1. Some oil companies are doing that. But what they are doing, what their products are causing in the market, and they don't talk about that. And so Nestle, I'm a little bit, it's not about Nestle, but I'm a little bit suspicious about Nestle because Nestle also makes claims for the health of their products. I read somewhere earlier this year, there was an internal memo of Nestle saying, well, but 60-70% of our products is not healthy, whatever we tweak. If you look at the cups, maybe whatever you do, that's not going to be a very sustainable coffee delivering solution. Even when you recycle it, we have another cup maker in the Netherlands, and they say, our cups are organic. But you can't throw them outside on your pile because then they never. So let's be very careful at what companies are looking. We know why they are doing it. One, hopefully they take it really serious, but they want. It's mainly marketing in my view.
Yeah, so greenwashing, we could say.
Yeah, but for HR, I think the interesting question is, where can we contribute? So, contributing to scope 3 is super, super difficult. Let's first look maybe at scope 1 and partly at scope 2. And that's things like commute into the office. That's scope 2. Do people live far away? Those type of things. So let's not take on too big shoes. Let's say, what can we do? Of course, in scope 1, we can certainly do things. Use less paper, etc., etc. Be more productive. Increasing productivity is an enormous. You need less people. You're more sustainable if you need less people. In the whole area of scope 2, we can do things. It's about working from home. It's about getting rid of all the lease cars. We can brainstorm about that. But let's not be too big. So the cups of Nestle is an interesting example, but maybe a little bit far away from what we can influence as an HR discipline.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose for me, there's different elements that HR can play in each one of those 3 areas that you highlight. And definitely we make immediate impact on things like car policy. Is that covering electric cars? Do we have the ability for people to charge their cars at work, which I know is a big gap at the moment? Exactly. How are they commuting to work? What does that look like? How renewable is it? Also, we often have impact over the facilities and the actual design of our organizations. Are we using solar? Are we connecting to renewable energy? And definitely things like packaging of how we send deliveries to our own employees. So there's actually a lot of internal mechanisms that we can directly influence. I think in that third one, it's about what questions do we ask about our supply chain. And that's kind of starts to link to what's our brand, what's our values, how do we want to look in the market, which I think ties into one area where it is quite important for us to start thinking about, which is how does corporate sustainability start to impact the way that talent see our organization, and in particular, how our customer sees our brand. And this, I think, is where we can get a competitive advantage if you position yourself in the market in the right way. So definitely, we're seeing more and more evidence of talent questioning certain companies and industry due to their practices and maybe not wanting to join them, and definitely customers doing that. So that makes me think, do HR need to get serious about how sustainability impacts things like recruitment and maybe learning and development and employer brand? What do you think about that aspect for HR and sustainability?
Now, I think all those aspects are related in a way. As you have seen on my list of HR trends for 22, that's also about the scope of HR. So you're mentioning it. It's not only what are we doing for our employees, it's also what are we doing for suppliers, what are we doing for clients, and that can certainly have a sustainability angle. How can we with our capacity as HR, for example, help clients of our organization to act more responsible and sustainable. So I think the scope element is important, and we can contribute in many areas. Some suppliers probably are too small, to be helped, and we can help them. So absolutely yes. Another trend I describe in my list is the increased attention to life coaching. That life coaching is about helping employees to be more happy and more healthy, and not only at work but in their total life. Yes. And there is also a sustainability element. How can we help our employees or our workforce to be more sustainable? Can we support them? Maybe financially, maybe with other things. So that's also an element where we, as HR profession, can contribute a lot. And the story, as you say, I think it's not an investment without a benefit. It's an investment with a benefit. We are more attractive as a brand. We are more attractive as an employer. Our employer branding position is increasing, and that's what is expected. So it's not. I think we cannot stop doing it. We should. We should do it. It's no choice.
Yes, it's almost, this is the future of work. And so we just need to do it in many ways. And it sort of is part and parcel of the position of your brand and your purpose in society, I suppose, as a brand and as a company. I think that's, exactly. And it's quite interesting, but also quite inspiring of where this could go, which I think is great. Yeah.
We can make sure that it's not only a marketing exercise. That's where we can play a role, and then let's really take it serious. This is going to be a very long-term, continuous effort.
Yeah, it's a shift in how we do business. And
Absolutely.
it's actually a long-term shift, isn't it? Because we're talking 10, 20 years to get to net zero targets. So this is long-term, as you said. We're in for this for forevermore. Yeah.
I've not given it a lot of thought, to be honest. So, but now we're discussing. You can see that if we would brainstorm longer and we look at the different scopes, we look at the different activities of HR, we look at the different client groups or the stakeholder groups, well, we could brainstorm many possible interventions where we can contribute. And I would encourage people to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear from people what they're doing and what they think about this topic, and what we can talk about next in relation to this topic as well. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Tom. I'm just like you. I've got so many ideas going around in my head. And one of the big themes is ESG, so environmental sustainability and governance. And that's the key area now. What is your policy and what does it look like in your organization? And we're going to take that into our practical tips. So start having a conversation in your organization about sustainability. What's going on? Do you have a pledge about being net zero by a certain date? Do you have a car policy that supports electrical vehicles and the ability to charge at work? Go and find out, have some conversations. By knowing more and understanding the position that your company has within the world, you can start to think about what are the practical next steps to help you become that corporate activist. Thanks for joining us today. This is Talking HR Trends with Natal and Tom. If you found this discussion valuable, please subscribe. Have a great day.